Hello, everybody, and thank you for joining us to the Draw to Perform online meeting program. I'm very happy to have Agnieszka Karasch with us today as the main speaker in this meeting, and looking forward to hear a lot of things that are relating to her latest book here, Reciprocal Drawing. I always find it hard to pronounce it, Agnieszka, but it's an amazing book that based on her PhD that published in 2023. But I'll let Alma introduce Agnieszka before and move from there. Alma?
Perfect, thank you very much. Agnieszka Karasch is a performance artist, researcher, and movement analyst. Her large life-size drawings based on her body's geometry, its actions and gestures. Existing as independent works, they also serve as diagrams for her reciprocal drawing, a method of collaborative drawing which she has developed as artistic research in her PhD thesis at Aalto University in Helsinki. It assumes two performers' continuous direct contact on the paper plane. The method draws from Laban movement analysis, but also from Xing Xie's, Steve Paxson's, Trisha Brown's, or Fluxus tradition, to name a few. Reciprocal drawing has been described in Agnieszka's book, Reciprocal Drawing, Bodies, Codependence, and Direct Contact in Drawing, published by Aalto Arts Books in 2023.
Thank you, Alma. Yeah, it's a much clearer introduction. I'll just say another sentence in terms of this format. This meeting and the next couple of meetings that we run over the last few months will be kind of like part of the celebration of 10 years to Draw to Perform, which in those 10 years we collaborated with more than 300 artists, local and international. And I'm really happy to kind of like reflect on things that happened, on some of the things that happened, because quite a lot of things happened in those 10 years. And also kind of like to look forward on activities that will involve in the future and collaboration that will be done with Draw to Perform in the future. But that's it. Now we're focusing on Agnieszka. It's a pleasure to collaborate again, and if only online with Agnieszka, because Agnieszka collaborated with Draw to Perform in 2016. It was in London. It was the Draw to Perform Symposium number 3 that I organized. And since then, a lot of had happened, and I'm moving the microphone to you, Agnieszka. Thank you for joining us, and thank you all.
Thank you. So again, good evening and good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for choosing this, for choosing to participate in this event today. I also want to thank Ram shortly for inviting me. For giving me space for presentation of reciprocal drawing, which is a collaborative approach to drawing, which I've worked on, as Ram said, for the past almost 10 years. I will start this lecture by presenting short clips from a video documentation of 2 experiments with reciprocal drawing, to which I invited Ram Samocha first, and then Estonian, New York-based artist Janika Perna. I hope she's here with us today. In this way, you will have an idea, a brief or general idea to what I will be referring during this session, because most of the session in my presentation I will base on pictures rather than movement, not to break up the flow of speech here. So if you could please, Ram, share the binding related little short clips from our experimentation in 2016.
Sure. So I'm doing a screen share right here, and it's those four ones. Sorry.
Yeah. So what you see here is a development or progression of movement and drawing at the same time while we are being connected by the rope that is wrapped around our wrists. And that's a broader perspective. This is, as far as I remember, the clip from the second performance. We did 2 30-minute performances. And there was a continuous codependence of our bodies during this coaction, since we were connected, as I said, by the rope attached to our wrists.
Sharing.
Yeah. And now the second case of reciprocal drawing. I'm going to share my screen, my desktop. Let's see. So this codependence is basis on the continuous or almost continuous contact between our hands. Right. So it hurts me and then release. So now that you've seen the fragments, I'd like to tell you more about the logic behind reciprocal drawing. I will first focus on the practical ways in which reciprocal drawing develops to then talk about theoretical basis, more or less, or in a very abbreviated version, of course. Reciprocal drawing can be especially useful for those of you who identify as artists and performers working with drawing. For those of you who seek to expand your individual practices through collaboration, but especially for students of art who seek to understand the basic concepts behind performative drawing. For this method gives tools to devise complex collaborative processes, release authenticity, come up with fresh concepts, and produce new compositions, or even transform the existing ones. My approach is also quite of interest for teaching artists who would like to expand their experimental and particularly drawing-related methodologies. For academics interested in performance and drawing, their theory and research concepts such as physicality, intentionality, reciprocity, embodiment, play, and generally the social relational aspects of human life. And last but not least, for movement analysts, who can use my method for identifying different mental states, so-called inner dispositions, bodily dispositions, based on the trace of the two bodies' joint movement. Yes, so I described reciprocal drawing, which I will define briefly in a moment in my book, which Ram already showed at the beginning. And the link to this publication can be found in the commentaries of this session, but also on my website, agakarasch.com. So imagine you try to develop a composition, a drawn composition with another artist, and simultaneously be continuously dependent on your collaborator's motions. So this is very difficult because the joint movement happens in many planes and levels and in different directions. So additional marking in codependence make this a very challenging task. First of all, we are both related, we act in relation to one another, but we are also focused simultaneously on the drawing. So there is a multi-directivity of attention and movement. When you research possible collaborative strategies which have been applied in drawing so far, most of them assume separation of actions in space and time, like conversation, like drawing, more or less. This is what Angela Rogers, the British scholar and artist, describes that. So there is a certain taking turns between the persons who draw within a certain space of the drawing. And even if the joint marking happens simultaneously within the same space of drawing, the bodies do not come, or rarely come, into contact. Like, for example, in these four pictures here, photographs, like joint accumulation of motifs in the upper left corner by M. Loram, or line dialogue, a beautiful series by Jane Grice with Karali McCall. And then in the left bottom corner, co-written by Nicole Vendel and Audrey Rose Burden, when there is this synchronous movement and artists pass each other on their respective paths, or different kinds of moving in unison, or mimicking, or mirroring each other, like in the case of this performance, which you can see here down in the right, on the right-hand side, What Remains Is to Come by Katrina Brown and Rosanna Irvine. The strategies that enable direct contact in performance and apart from drawing, generally speaking, those performance strategies that enable direct contact are, for example, the rope binding and the point of contact, which is a strategy that I'll elaborate soon about. So they've been utilized for drawing by great artists like Dora Maurer and Miklos Erdely, in their creativity exercises in the 70s or 60s even. You can see here the fragment of this exercise when two people touch each other, basically one person holding the other person's hand and drawing with it. Or another example by Helena Almeida and Arturo Rosa, when they were, let's say, dragging each other along a certain path, and their feet or legs were connected by the wire. There was also this beautiful case in Lisbon again by Gricewood and McCall, but then it was strictly conceptual, nothing was being drawn, and they were still connected by the elastic band. Or the more recent example, a beautiful performance by M. Lauren during COVID times, where the participants were connected by the ropes again, or some kind of a stiff metal pieces. Yet this and other similar activities, as I found out, or application of these strategies did not really express the complexity of the method, the spatial complexity of the method in terms of drawing and movement. And in this sense, I think that they've been insufficiently explored for drawing so far. And if you're generally interested in different partnering strategies through which artists connect to draw together, I encourage you to check a separate chapter that I've described or that I've devoted to this subject in my book, Reciprocal Drawing. So to define the method or the approach, so to say, reciprocal drawing is a collaborative method of drawing, specifically the one in which two partners use direct, continuous bodily contact while moving and marking on the horizontal surface of paper. And to enable continuity of this contact and complexity of movement, the interaction happens in basically three performative frames. The first one is reciprocal partnering strategy. The second one is the score, or the rules and diagrams. The diagrams the scores are like instructions for the collaborators to be able to project their joint movement in space. And finally, a repertoire of actions that in this case is a selection of or collection of pre-selected actions and gestures for the collaborators to jointly interpret on paper. And this is just a digression here. I've developed, in my research, I've developed this repertoire of actions. They were categorized by me based on Laban movement analysis, a system for movement analysis, according to several criteria that made them strictly drawing related, enabled access to the paper plane, and many other criteria that I found important for drawing together and exchanging motions while drawing. So with these three frames, the collaborators imbue their contacts with complexity, purpose, and direction. So now I will exemplify how these frames work in practice. So let's first take look at point of contact as a partnering strategy, exemplified in the second video showing my collaboration with Janika Perna. You may have experienced this principle in Latino dances, where the joint moving is about maintaining tension between the partner's hands and leading and following in contact. And by the way, this similar logic appears in contact improvisation dance, in martial arts, many martial arts, and in Grotowski's actors training. And to utilize the point of contact, first, as I mentioned before, the score is needed. So here on the left-hand side, you can see an exemplary diagram with a small draft where the letters A and J, which you can see here on the upper edge, there's a J, and down there's A. So these letters symbolize our names, and the straight lines, they show the progression of movement, or suggest the direction and progression of movement for the partners. And this diagram connects to my large-scale solo drawing on the right-hand side. You can see, so the diagram is connected to that drawing. It is, this drawing was made by me in my studio, and I used selected actions from the repertoire, like extensions, flexions, floating, sliding, and flicking, all different types of gestures and actions that I found appropriate for future collaboration. So before the co-action, Janika knew we would be jointly interpreting these specific actions in contact. She also knew about the diagram. In this way, we both had a similar general projection of movement. And during the co-action, we adopted the specific dynamics of point of contact to drawing. Our hands remained connected for most of the time. And one session lasted for about 1.5 hours, more or less. We did more of those sessions. This is an exemplary one. So if you and your collaborator jointly project the diagram, if you're able to do it, if you both improvise in trying to recreate it, it makes your bodily dialogue about, and the marks about something. Your emotions become more intentional and more authentic. In this dialogue, the partnering strategy, the way you connect, the point of contact in this case, is like a cultural code or a language you relate to. And then the pre-selected actions, in this case, the floating, the flicking, and other gestures that I mentioned before, they're like subjects you jointly interpret, and the diagram imbues this or makes this dialogue about something. It gives it a direction, like a conversation about something. So these three frames make your exchange more diverse in terms of body efforts. The drawn traces may also seem spatially and tonally more diversified. And this slide shows two results of the same collaborative approach with the same diagram and the same actions. Yet the solutions are endless, because if we take the same diagram and the same actions and try to recreate it again and again, it produces different results. And also here, you can compare how this collaboration with Janika added to my original solo drawing on the left-hand side below that I showed before, by transforming it into its more nuanced and less, if you will, less obvious or less self-conscious, less controlled versions. And yet this is another example of where I proposed a different diagram to Janika. So on the left, you can see my original solo drawing. And on the right-hand side, you can see it transformed by our reciprocal drawing practice. And I would like to draw your attention to the scale of those drawings. This particular one is my solo drawing, again, from the studio, a basis for a different diagram and a different point of contact collaboration with another artist, Sofia Hürmann from Austria. And we transformed it to this type of similar in scale, but a different expression of my original solid drawing. So that was point of contact. And now another strategy that imposes strict codependence is the rope binding. You could see it in drawing in the first video. To the experimentation with binding, I invited Ram Samocha, the host of this event. And historically, as some of you may know, or most of you may know, was famously explored in the 80s by Tetrin Hsieh and Linda Montano in their rope piece, when they lived connected to each other by the rope for a year. Of course, they didn't draw, they were simply connected. That was a kind of an existential exchange, commitment connected with contact with continuous codependence. Yet before that, already in the 70s, binding appeared in drawing in the work entitled Drawing Event by Max Evans and Max Dean, excuse me, Max Dean and Dennis Evans. So here again, you can see a specific push and pull dynamics, one path of movement, and kind of a very clear message of how strenuous a relationship can be. And practically the drawing expresses that. So returning to reciprocal drawing, here again, I first composed the diagram and the related solo drawing. And I used the actions from the repertoire, in this case, rotations and ringing gestures, explored them in different ways in my studio. And before we started, we meaning I and Ram, Ram knew the frames and some instructions, such as the rope has to stay tight between us and we will not exceed the paper plane. And in this experimentation, which took place during the Draw to Perform symposium, we first experienced tensions and misunderstandings because we were learning to handle the rope and to adapt to one another. So acts of revenge, competition took place, some, from my perspective, some fight for dominance or breaking of the rules, and protection of own space, and et cetera, et cetera. Yet towards the end, and at the beginning as well, but more towards the end, we arrived at different body flow, speed and pressure. We tried multiple directions of movement, different body positions. We introduced here in the left bottom corner, you can see we introduced different supportive actions and the ways to regenerate our bodies and to be able to continue. We also tried new interpretations of the diagram, and we looked for ways to generally prolong the collaboration and make the drawing more compact. And such were the results of our exchange. So this much for practice in brief, and let's go over to the theoretical part. I will continue by focusing on two chosen concepts. There are many, many more, but there is no time, and I wish we can discuss some of them later on in this session. so two concepts that underlie reciprocal drawing, which I hope will be a springboard for our discussion here. The first is reversible resistance, the concept which I develop in my book. The classic example of resistance, living resistance, generally speaking, through drawing is Matthew Barney's drawing restraint series from the 80s, when the artist challenged himself by drawing on the walls and at the same time being attached to the floor by the bungee cord. And in this approach, his resistance is static. This is a result of the body performing in relation to inanimate matter. And the resistance changes according to the distance between the body and the immovable point. So this resistance is fairly foreseeable. And the artist has to generate motivation within himself to continue. And we know this feeling of resistance, or this experience of resistance, more or less from individual sports like swimming, running, etc. This type of self-motivation that we have to generate to continue. In reciprocal drawing, the resistance is reversible, so it fluctuates continuously in the living bodies, depending on our determination of realization of our goals in space. So it is jointly regulated or co-regulated by adapting the speed, flow, pressure, and so on. So it's quite complex, and it is therefore unforeseeable. We never really know when we will tire ourselves, because as we learn to regenerate, we may prolong this coaction. And also the artists, the motivation, kind of, the competitive spirit, so to say, ignites spontaneously. And in this sense, because we mutually frustrate and encourage each other on our respective paths. So that's a very complex experience of resistance. I call it reversible, fluctuating. And if you experience that, ever have a chance to experience that, that is quite exciting, at least for me. It makes the quality of your textures and layers, the tonality, everything basically that exceeds within the drawing, and everything that exceeds the drawing is quite complex and interesting in this type of bodily exchange. And for more extreme experience, you can use rope binding, and for more subtle one, the point of contact, where you join hands together. Next comes the idea of post-consensual collaboration, which means that when we come together, this post-consensual collaboration is a term used by Martina Rozan, who refers to the type of collaboration when we come together and we can, but we don't necessarily seek harmony at all costs, but we create safe grounds to generate and explore the value of tensions and conflicts for our artistic practice and for our relation in general. So there are examples of conflict-oriented collaborations in drawing. One of them is the Inappropriate Collisions by artists and scholars Catherine Baker and Kimberly Foster, when the two artists exchanged their individual works by post. And the aim was to sabotage their individual respective attempts at upholding some kind of individual convention. In reciprocal drawing, polarization is far more risky because the conflict happens not only on a visual, conceptual, but also on a bodily, emotional plane. So it's a very intimate experience. We are fully engaged in conflict with our bodies and emotions. We are here and now, and there can be different types of revenge, as I said, mutual destruction of the previously worked out marks, patterns, purposeful breaking of the rules, forcing the other to make up for some loss, and complex emotions like anger, impatience, or frustration. And these are, of course, my experiences, but observation and analysis, as well as reading, confirms that. Reading about other people's experiences confirms that. So yet within that safe, not for real kind of symbolic space, we discover not only new possibilities for the practice, but also learn about ourselves in the context of I-other relation. We are able to reflect on that with a drawing in view as a kind of a confirmation or reinforcement of that relation that happened. And what's more, we mutually play the roles of so-called crossbench practitioners. So when Ram comes, or Janika, when they come as outsiders into something that I've created, let's say the diagram, the solo drawing, and we mutually, we together try to recreate that, it stirs my ideas about drawing. It stirs my ideas or destroys my ideas about myself, or somehow makes it possible for me to see myself from the distance. This type of conflict is what makes reciprocal drawing applicable for more for students of art and artists with performative backgrounds, although in cases of any other art instruction, as a teacher, you can modify the diagram, the actions, and the strategy to make this exchange less volatile. So hope this these practical and theoretical ideas inspire you and give you some material for feedback. Thank you for your attention. And also, I'm also interested what you, Ram, and Janika, or Ram, as you said at the beginning, what you think and how you remember fragments or everything about this collaboration.
Thank you, Agnieszka.
Should I stop sharing?
Yes, please. Here you are.
Yeah.
Agnieszka, thank you so much for this presentation and kind of like clarifying a little bit or summarize for us a work that you worked on for such a long time, and I had the chance to taste or participate and understand it, the forms, the rules, the possibility, the potential. And so thank you very much for
Sure.
for coming and introducing it. As it's, I have to say that I found, I don't know how, I don't really remember how we got to be in contact with each other towards the third symposium of Draw to Perform, which was all about collaborations. That was the main subject about this symposium. But I have to say that there was this thing about your practice and your research that was always fascinating me, because it's so different from how I work in my practice, and or how I experience or plan works that I'm doing live or in the studio. And I found it fascinating. And I remember it was very strong, the collaboration. I remember also that it was very challenging symposium, because it was all about collaboration, and I worked with I think it was 30 artists that had their performances and workshops over this symposium. But so my attention was quite distracted, but I remember how focused I was when I tried to be when there was this moment of collaboration. There were two collaborations that I did in this symposium. It was with you and also with Nava from Toronto, which work really differently. But our collaboration was kind of like one that I remember particularly in terms of trying to focus myself in following the rules and following the diagrams. And by the way, I didn't see the sketch, the last sketch that you did before our, did I? Before our performance, I did?
I showed both of you to you, and you were supposed to, I mean, I gave a chance kind of for you to pick out one of them, but you said we will do both.
Ah, wow. Yes. My memory.
So that was your choice. Yes, I mean, I noted that down quite after, I mean, soon after the performance. So this is what happened, what I remember.
But didn't you presented me the idea, or you also showed me the final drawing that you did in your studio?
I presented you for sure the diagram, the two of them, but I can't remember if I presented you with the drawing. But the diagram is the basis for you because it shows you basically the projection of movement and the directions. And if you know the actions, then there's a very high probability that you will recreate something that is a version of that solo entry. But I cannot remember right now, but most probably yes.
You know, it's interesting because I have few questions for you that I prepared, and one of them was the difference between you that drawing in your own studio or working towards performance that you're planning, and the result of the collaboration, which is quite clearly in the examples that you showed are quite different, right? And there is and then for me it's quite interesting to understand your relation to those two actions or two approaches, because it's as I said, it's so different in a way, yeah, but and it seems like your experience while you're working by yourself on an idea and in your collaboration, it's kind of like having it's like having two heads in a way. And I would like to hear from you. Maybe that will be my first question. How do you see it? Like when you experiencing something in your studio and then you shifting and doing it in collaboration, how do you experience the shall I summarize it by the final product or the final yeah, not the action itself, which is clearly there is
right right. That's a very good question, and the answer is not that easy. Of course, there is a very personal connection to the original drawing, to the solo drawing, but then and then again, that drawing drives me, or the image or the projection of the drawing drives me during the collaboration. But then one learns, or I learn simply during collaboration, that there is a certain loss that I have to accept in order to be able to enjoy its new version, the version that results from the co-experience of drawing together. So I'm faced with the possibility of searching for new solutions within that new drawing. But frankly saying, the co-experiences with you were second in the raw. I first collaborated with another artist with whom I did a lot of preparation work, so to say, but within the different frames. But also we were also connected by the ropes, but there were different things happening then. Yeah, so that was quite fresh for me still. That was the first public display of the approach, and I guess 10 years ago I was less flexible to accept the results of the collaborative version. So as I was describing that in my book, I did not take those works back home, but I photographed them and then I analyzed these photographies. And thanks God, because that analysis gave me profound information, basically about the states I was finding myself in during the collection. What I also, but on the other hand, what I appreciated in that drawing, in the visual, let's say, results or records of this collection between us, was the way it expanded, and especially at certain stages. So I think for now I may say that in order to accept it, the new version, let's say, or the collaborative version, in order to accept it aesthetically even, I would stop that collaboration at certain stage, let's say on the 15th, 20th minute, and I would restrain from coaction to be able to really enjoy the meatiness, the depth, and the strength of this drawing. So both of these drawings. But yet again, you know, the image, the drawn image is always the performative image is always connected to the experience or movement or relation or some kind of state of doing something. So so it is hard to really disconnect these two processes. Although I do try constantly, but this is very hard to disconnect them. So just to summarize and to answer your question, now I basically enjoy everything. I draw a lot of satisfaction from these products. I really appreciated all these breaking rules and tensions that were there. I enjoyed them a lot, and but over that time, I would prefer us stopping at a certain point before we go into power plays and fights and shifting of positions.
It's really interesting what you're saying. Interesting what you're saying, Agnieszka, because what I remember in terms of the visual, well, we did 2 sessions. The first one was at the beginning of the first day of the symposium, and the second one was towards the end of the first day. So it was the same day, but separated, not for one that following another. But I do remember that, like, for years now, I am saying to myself, why didn't I save the last one, which was quite intensive circle with some flashes and there were a lot of charcoal going on there, and I guess there were also a lot of things from other artists that I had to deal with, but over there I keep getting back to it, and I said, I should have saved this drawing, even if it was 3 meter by 3 meter. I should have saved it and take it with me from London to Brighton, and I regret about it. But yeah, but we have the documentation, and I have to say, to the other parts that you said in terms of the control and uncontrol, in a way, I do remember that in this, first of all, I have to say well, maybe I'll do it in my experience. I remember that when you presented this collaboration that we're going to do, and you presented all the rules and all the restrictions and all the materials, and like it was very systematic and very organized and ordered for me. And I remember that there was kind of like a sort of a resistance in me, because I'm trying to work instinctively, and I was challenging myself. And one of the things that I was saying to myself, like, yes, let's try something else if you're collaborating with somebody. And last night when I keep reading this amazing book by you, but one of the things that you're quoting there is myself saying, after we met in the last section, I was saying to you, the collaboration, I enjoyed it. I thought you would be strict, but it was fun. And I think that summarized it for me. I don't remember I said it, but thank you for remembering. But yeah, I think there is kind of like for me, you know, like some kind of afraid of you know, resistant, or being afraid of or I'm saying it because I don't remember quite clearly. So even in dance, like when I have to remember some kind of movements, it's very hard for me, and then it's frightening me. But still, I love to dance. So there is this thing. And with you, I remember that, and looking back, and now before this meeting, I looked back at those videos that I just saw and a few others to refresh. And it's really interesting how what you remember and how you remember it, and what left in your head, and the commentation shows you. It's really interesting, you know, go first seeing it and then seeing it after a while, a long time. And it surprised me because we really enjoyed it. I wasn't that much intention as I remembered in a way. And I remembered especially the last session. There were two things that I remember clearly. There was this thing, we did two performances, and it surprised me. And we before that, we said that we will perform with the black cloth, but we didn't describe anything what we will wear. It was quite interesting that the first performance was kind of like a sort of a daylight performance, and our outfit was like that. It was more training and more sporty one. And in the other one, in the second one, which was towards the evening, it was a little bit more official, and like we dressed up in a way more to this. And I really liked it that it happened without us talking about it at all. It just was an instinct. And the second one that I remember was in the action itself. And of course, I think you will remember it clearly, that at the second performance, well, the work, and you describe it, that there is those things that we're working with the rules and with the plan. And I remember that towards the end of the performance, I kind of like, I had enough in a way. And so I reacted in few ways. One of them was to push myself with the charcoal, with all the remnants of the charcoal on the floor. I pushed a few times physically out of the circle, the clear circle, which I kind of liked very much in terms of visuality that it added to the final image. And it wouldn't happen if we would have stopped before anyway. And the second one was and that was like after doing it and after feeling kind of like a frustration from this whole interaction, or a joy and frustration, of course, and being it's really like it was new. But I remember that I said, okay, I had enough, and then I went away, and you left there. And me experiencing it and coming back and doing the finale at the end. It was so perfect, and I think that's one of the things that are so appealing, and we're looking forward when live performance action is happening. Something that is totally surprising, that it's intuitive and you based on your instincts, and that was a very strong moment for me, and I think for you also.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, the parts of which you say you had enough, or you were breaking the rules, and sometimes not even consciously but subconsciously, simply trying to get out of this mode of drawing or relation or movement, it is described as it is kind of inscribed in this safe space. So we are there to practice those experiences, to come out with whatever there is in ourselves. Yes. So this is the safe space of drawing or connection between us. And we are not destroying ourselves for real, but we do it kind of, not for real, right? We take up this convention of play. This kind of subversive, like Caillois, the French, the Belgian sociologist explained, was like agon or vertigo, kind of subversion-based, conflict control-based plays. But yet this want to break out or to change the mode of joint existence is there, but we do not really practice that in real, let's say, but we do that within that safe space. And absolutely, reciprocal drawing is a space for that. So for such experience. Yeah. So
before we'll open the conversation, I think there are two things that I would like to point still. One is the drawing itself. I noticed that it's really interesting. I have to say I love the images, your images, and the way that becoming. And I noted myself that your drawings, first of all, this subject of the scale of the drawing, which I found more and more interesting searching about it, in terms of the shift for a more performative drawing, and then shift from much more larger in scale and in size drawings. But in your drawings also I found that there is this thing that your drawings are, even though they are in black and white and in some kind of grays, they are more layered and shifting towards painting than drawing. I don't know if you can take it from there, but what I'm trying to say that there is this kind of layering in your drawings, and it's kind of like make me think of the shift from basic action and basic drawing or mark making to a more layered and painterly
I see what you mean.
image. Would you agree with that?
I mean, technically, it is still a drawing, however layered it is, however many layers you find there. You know, it's just the mode of work. Even if we work solo, we oftentimes tend to put layers. Let's say the tonality first, and a certain percentage of gray, to then, you know, kind of break the virgin white, so to say, and then we may even smudge the tonal mist, so to say, and then up on that put another layer of quite clear and contrasted marks. It's still a drawing. Yeah, but but the aspect of color that is possible to introduce, plus yeah, but I would still stick to the idea of drawing, or to the technique itself, to the medium of drawing, for it is not really easy to erase it once the marks are there. No matter if it's layered or not, it is not really easy to erase it and come back to let's say the clear surface of the primary layer. So
But
yeah.
Like when you are doing collaboration and live performances, it's like usually lasting from 20 minutes to an hour an action. But how much do you work in your studio on one drawing, 3 by 3 meter?
Yeah, it varies from 4 up to 8 hours sometimes in total, but
so it's always one session. You're not extending it for like a week that you're coming back and you're going.
No, it can be multiple sessions as well. Plus, if you remember,
it can be multiple sessions, so you can pause it and then come back after 2 days. Yeah. And continue.
Absolutely, because it's quite tiring, you know, almost 4 meters, 4 by 4, 3.5, 3.5. It's to make it really rich and layered, one has to, you can imagine, be there for a longer time. But then if you do the same version collaboratively, or if you interpret this drawing collaboratively, the two bodies and the shifting and the whole coaction that happens there really accelerates this process, in my view. It makes you can achieve, or both of you or we can achieve that effect much faster, because we are smudging the whatever there is with the two bodies with more feet. Basically, there is more coaction there, more happening. So yeah.
So for instance, the first session that we did with the 2 circles, and I saw the beautiful sketch that you did. Like how long it took you to did this quite dark, intense image?
I would say about 8 to 10 hours, but also not in one session, but multiple. Can't remember right now, but also you said something or mentioned something about tiredness or being fed up with a certain approach. I guess this really does happen more in performative or let's say public spaces. It may happen in public spaces, because I also experienced that with another artist, this kind of tension and impatience. While if we placed ourselves in more intimate conditions, like I did with Janika Perna, we worked in the studio, and our work was much longer. We made 3-4 sessions, and each about 1.5 hours. It lasted for a week, so we were theoretically able to, although we closed the sessions in one action, but we theoretically could have returned to that drawing and kind of made it richer and richer and build it out in the same mode of drawing. So there are different options, although performance and public display makes it in the sense exciting that those intense emotions come into play, and there is a certain aspect of self-consciousness that is there, as you remember.
Interesting. Yeah, it's not not accidental that I'm talking about the durational of the final of building the final images, like something that is occupying my mind lately very much. And the drawing behind me is like I'm coming back and forward for like months now on it. So like the tempo of the drawing is changing, and also while you're getting older, it's so like this. And while I'm talking with you, I say, oh, this is a nice thing for an event, like doing an event that is happening in sequences.
Absolutely.
So not one day you're working on actions that happening in one day, and then there are continuing in other days at the same format. That's
right. It's like with dance, like when you go to ballroom dances, or you simply practice dancing with another, even in contemporary manner, it is also about exercising. So you can co-adapt with time and make this joint movement really a masterpiece, in the sense of projecting quite complex movements and adapting your pressure, speed, flow, space of the body so aptly that we're not driving ourselves to chaos, or to bodily tension.
Yeah, but there is a difference in terms of, like, let's say, dance performance. Like, there is this thing, like when you're doing a dance and that evening, and that's the dance, and you can repeat it another evening. But I don't remember. Well, probably there is, but like doing a dance one evening and then continuing it the next evening, and then like, you know what I mean? Like, because there is this thing with the mark making and the leftover, and the thing that you can work with it and continue it because it's also visual and not just movement. So there is this thing of like mold it in a way, this option of mold and working with it. And it's just like brainstorming about options. My last question to you, and this is like I don't know, what's come first, the thought about performance and the idea, or the connection to and that's relating to something that I gave a lecture about just lately about repetition and drawing performance. And that's why I'm asking this specific question. What comes before for you? The thought, the idea, and the brainstorm about the performance, or your physical relation to the body, and your experiments with movement in terms of building your ideas or an action?
In this particular case, that was more, partially, a big part, it was the experience of joint movement. I noticed that long before, before this whole research started, I had a need to connect through the body to my students. And I could not do that because there was no frame to do that. If I touched any of my students, showing them how to draw or suggesting any type of gesture, they would have to know why they were doing it and what was about to follow and what was the purpose of it. So so the next step was actually the connection to the body and to my bodily experiences with joint movement, specifically with contact improvisation, specifically with yoga as well. I noticed that for example, in Grotowski's actor's training, this immediate touch between the instructor and his student gives, because there is a frame of contact, there is a certain way of moving, it is planned and structured fairly, that there is a way to communicate. So I was thinking that this particular relation that is contact-based, it can be reproduced or transferred to drawing in some way, but I have to find the frames. So first was the movement, first was the idea of contact, of touch on the paper plane, and then was performance, meaning performance-based frames and drawing and so on and so forth. So yeah, I hope I answer your question.
And thinking about the diagrams and the actions and the possibilities.
And studying of
very interesting.
and Katrina Brown and the LMA, the movement analysis and so on. So I had to find tools from performance and from drawing to really be able to collide or connect them together to have a background or a springboard for discussion with another artist or another student for that matter. But yeah, so
thank you very much. I think at that point we will open the discussion for questions from you patient people. Is there any question? If you have any question for Agnieszka, please unmute yourself and you can show yourself, or just we can hear your voice and join the discussion, please. Any question? That's always interesting. I have a list of questions, but guys, is there any question to Agnieszka that you would like to introduce to her? Okay, well, yeah.
Hello. Weren't there some in the chat I saw before? Is somebody mentioned that? That's
Yannicka, is it you talking now?
Yes, I was intersecting that thing. I think I saw some in the chat where there's some questions in the chat maybe. I could of course ask, but I also on motion, so I might not be such a continuous speech.
Okay, so I'll ask Alma maybe to tell us if there is any question about.
Yeah, so first of all, there's mostly a lot of thank yous. Everyone just saying thank you so much, Agnieszka, for the really interesting talk. Rachel says that she has your book and references it very often on her desk. Simon Reyes says, notably, the intimacy of the collaboration is really, really interesting. And since he's used to more computer-based collaborative work, the introduction of like a physical connection is something that he feels is really lacking in his area of work and could definitely be learned from this method. The question is how you can implement the relationship between those two processes. And Adam is also asking Agnieszka what your plans are for the future.
Could you please repeat just the two questions? I understand general message, but the two questions weren't really clear.
Yeah, of course. So I think the first one is less of a question and just more of a comment to Simon Rose talking about his field, which is computer-based collaborative work, which can take inspiration from the kind of the intimacy and the physicality of your process. And Adam is just asking, what are your plans for the future in relation to this book that's coming out?
Good question, yeah.
Yeah, good question. Firstly, I'm open to further developing this approach, specifically in different settings of different diagrams, different actions, and within these particular two strategies. Because I believe that if I invited, let's say, a completely different temperament temperaments than Ram, Yannicka, or other artists that collaborated, then this work would, each time with each new person, would change. So that is also very interesting. That makes these results or the drone images themselves very personal, intimate, and also it gives me a chance to analyze myself. It's like an entry to my own world in context of relations with people. So that's the first step, basically collaborations with other artists. Another possible development is the research or postdoctoral research on ethics of touch in the context of art pedagogy, or art or drawing instruction, for that matter. It's as you said, Alma, it is a very intimate, very intense experience, and students agreeing to contact with their teacher or is one thing, but there's always some kind of hierarchy between these two positions. So modifications are needed, and some more in-depth ideas and knowledge about what I'm doing there with the students ethics-wise, what it can cause. Next step is also, in terms of artistic research, is more focus on the partner, on the collaborator, because this research so far has been it is where I focused on my memory. I also described the movement through movement analysis. And I also did a lot of reading on movement and philosophy and theory of drawing and performance. So I gathered enough material to really analyze and come up with different conclusions about this approach. Whereas the next step would be focusing strictly on my collaborators in terms of interviewing, talks, impressions, and so on. And finally, also, I think that, as I mentioned at the beginning, there's a whole possibility of applications in psychology or in academia in terms of research itself into different aspects of human life, where this approach can be used as a tool, not really as a focus of study or subject of study, but as a tool to study whatever else there is to be studied in psychology or sociology. So so this more or less, it's quite a broad area, but I'm looking forward to these activities.
It's endless, but I think also after 10 years of research, you can say, oh, I just had a book published recently and I'm going to rest a little bit. That's
absolutely
fun. But
that's
yeah, all those points are excellent. Rachel want to ask a question here. I can see in the chat. Rachel, would you like to ask, please? You're on mute, sorry. Good to see you, Rachel. Hi.
Hiya. Yeah, it was fantastic presentation, and I've got your book, so I've been having a really good look at what you've been doing anyway, and have probably imbibed a huge amount of what you've been doing. But you've already touched on what interested me, and what I kept thinking about as it was going through, and this is as much for you, Ram, as well, is this whole submission, and you said about your students, who's leading, who's not leading, who's pulling, who's pushing. And you were saying about some of the things that you're going to be exploring as it goes onwards. And I suppose I began to be quite interested in Ram sort of almost suggesting at times is sort of being pulled in directions that might not have been, I don't know whether you were saying this, but that's how I was reading it, that when somebody, it's your project, you invite people to follow a particular set of instructions, and as somebody who's leading that process, to some degree you are controlling it because you've set out the agenda, and then you've set out a set of rules. But what I began to think, well, is there a point, if you kept working with the same person, that it would become more of a different collaboration? because that person's voice would become more embedded into it, because it's just how it would happen the longer it goes on and the more harmonized you become, which I think I love the harmony in the way the drawing happens. But there's different body weights, there's different sizes, there's different physicalities. And I'm interested to know the resistance, the disruption that would happen if that was pushed to its nth degree. And I don't know what would happen. It's a process.
Yes, but you said something about submission and control. I believe that this approach gives tools, really, the other one to reciprocate and to control. So once I invite the person to collaborate, I'm not assuming that that everything will be going my way, or that I'll be pushing somebody to do exactly what I want. This process.
I don't think you do. I'm
Uh-huh.
not suggesting you do. It's more questioning how that process happens.
Yes, but
because if you don't know, I mean, you work with some people on for a longer period, but obviously at the beginning, it's like when you first meet any collaborator, it's sort of, you don't always know everything about everybody and how they are. But I'm also quite keen that if there was that sense where it is about controlling, or it is about submission, and where that gets pushed, the gets pushed to a further degree, and what happens in that process, and how does that happen, and maybe to find out more about when, Ram, you were working with Agnieszka,
It's
that process.
really interesting subject, actually, because our meeting, I have to say that I had, like, before we did those 2 sessions, we haven't practiced at all. And I met Agnieszka for the first time in the day of the symposium. And because I had so many people to direct, Agnieszka was running and said, well, when are we going to talk about the performance? And we had, like, I think 15 minutes or maybe 10 minutes just for Agnieszka to give me direction. So it was all very raw and very very fast. But and I'm sure that if we worked as Agnieszka worked with Janika for a few sessions in the studio, that would have been totally different. And from my experience working in collaboration with a musician, for instance, with Mark Brown, which he's a jazz musician, and we collaborated together and we did few sessions until the final performance. There is a progression. Clearly, there is some kind of a progression where you kind of like starting to understand and getting to know and expect things that your partner is doing, and build up your actions according to it as it evolves, and as the meetings or the actions or the performance progress, it's get I don't know if more interesting, but for sure you kind of like more focused in a way. So I don't know if it's good or bad, because I really like the, you know, like the raw session, which brings a lot of energy and unexpected actions. But yeah, it's interesting both ways.
Yeah.
Thank you. There is another question here.
Thank you,
Rachel. There is another question here about materials, I think. I'd like to ask about materials and what materials are chosen and why. That's a good one.
So technically, we have, when we draw, we have charcoals and graphites attached to our fingers with a tape. That reduces the let's say the chaotic movements or motions. but occasionally when we progress, those tools, they fall out of those fingers, so they have to be exchanged or spontaneously selected from the tools, from similar tools like graphites and charcoals that lay around the drawing or around the paper. In terms of paper is usually Fabriano because it is easily transportable in long distances. When I work in the studio, I work on quite large or thick grammatures, different pieces of paper. What else?
I have to mark here, so because a lot of people working with this strip of Fabriano, because this is the largest they can find.
Right,
There
exactly.
is the photographer paper. It's very, very large, and you can do much larger. So please use it if you do want not to do a strip. Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, that's a good remark. So these as because there's also this specific, cannot remember right now the brand of it, but they're the thickest charcoals possible. They're easy to hold and they smudge nicely, although they're quite expensive. But these make it possible for the quite a broad gesture to last with a long trace. They're not using off immediately, and sometimes the speed of this motion, especially in binding, is so intense and so high that if the tool is delicate or fine, it may break easily or simply wear down. So you're left with drawing with your fingers, simply dirty fingers, which is also possible, by the way. But yeah, so quite chunky, huge, softer, like 4B, 6B, 8B charcoal sticks, and of different sizes, but preferably the big ones, and graphites, also quite softer ones, but quite long. I devote a separate section to materials there in the book, so it can be dealt into in more detail.
Yeah. Okay, there is a question from Janika here. She's asking, what was the hardest point in the process of research? Gone.
Yeah, that's a very interesting question, Janika. I had a crisis when I knew I had to stop drawing, I had to stop collaborating, I had to put the brake on all the practical part, and I had to start writing. Because writing a PhD demands a separate capacity, separate thinking, different approach. It demands also a lot of reading. So it felt like I was trying to stop a spinning wheel, and it lasted for about a year, basically, that I could not. So I started working as a teacher again, and I had to search for help in my university among my supervisors, advisors who simply supported that process, and it started finally, bit by bit. So that was, but as far as the practical part itself, I enjoyed every bit of it, and I feel myself first of all an artist, then a researcher. That's more or less how it was. Yeah.
Thanks. Farida asking, I would like to ask how your practice begin. Are you collect inspiration from other, or it comes from your research?
No, I simply go in artistic research. That's a very good question, by the way, Farida. In artistic research, there has to be a certain plan of action, or the methodology, they call it, according to which the progress develops. So sometimes a person may change it. Let's say, for example, in my case, I was starting with the idea to work with students, And even with, yeah, I'm not going to be mentioning every single bit or detail of it, but the first was the pedagogical stance or direction, but then I changed to artist collaboration. So that changed, but when that was established, I followed a certain methodological path. So I went through first I went through categorizing of those bodily actions based on Laban movement analysis. Then I went into research on the strategies of connection themselves, different combinations, and I chose also the binding and the point of contact as two extreme examples of the same mode of work, let's say, of being close to one another. And then I step by step kind of tested different combinations of actions and the strategies and the rules. So, but that was already established from the beginning, so to say. It lasted for quite long, and from today's perspective, I may say that I could have limited those performances to 2, 3, but I did 8 or 9 more or less altogether. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. There is a question from Simon here. Alma, would you like to read this one from Simon, please?
Yeah, so Simon was working at an online university, which means that he doesn't have the opportunity for any direct contact with students. He was wondering whether you have any thoughts about adapting your drawing work to a physical separation, and whether it's the drawing or the connection and the collaboration performance that's kind of what defines the process.
How do you think your drawing work would adapt to the separation? Yeah, there's first of all, Simon, so there's as I said, I sacrificed the entire chapter. There are tables and categories of different collaborative approaches to drawing and different ways people adopt performance to drawing. So this could be an inspiration for you. But the whole idea in reciprocal drawing is about being codependent. So in terms of working online, it is a very demanding, it could be a very demanding experience, other than perhaps by some sensory robots that somehow make us feel what the other person somewhere there in the digital space is doing. But that is an interesting question. I haven't really thought about how that work could be adapted to this type of separation. That there should be some, I guess, devices or hardware, software or hardware that enables feeling the other, although feeling the touch of the other, although not being able to directly access in person. That I imagine, but that would have to be researched in the future, I guess, by somebody else.
Is there any other question to Agnieszka?
Yeah, there's a couple more questions in the chat.
Okay.
So Sarita has asked Agnieszka how the practice actually began. Whether
we've been
sorry, I was looking at the wrong question. Rachel, who's talking about the practice and the research writing element, which she completely emphasizes with. Now that you've written your research and the academic element, how do you feel that writing it enhances your physical practice?
Could you repeat the two last sentences? I'm not really sure, or maybe you can show where this question is in the comments.
Shall I just ask you the question?
Yes, thanks, Rachel.
Yes, please. Yes.
Well, I completely emphasize. Well, I understand, empathize. You know, that sort of practice and being a practitioner and then having to do the research. which you're quite clearly a researcher. But what I was interested to sort of really inquire is, you obviously have done all the research. So now taking all of that research back into your practice, how that has enhanced, changed, modified, empowered your practice. And then that's the question.
The practice itself, I must say at this point, is more mature. I'm open to reflection on how I draw, basically, and what I do it for, and how the actual marks and how the body is feeling the different intensities of efforts, of flow, of pressure and speed and its own space. There is also some aspect of energy safe mode that I tend to respect nowadays more. I think that that I work in that I tend to work or envision my work in smaller formats because that's going to be that will make those solo works simply richer. But to tell you frankly, there is a lot of different, sometimes very personal realizations about myself when I reflect on the practice and commemorate or remember those collaborative experiences. I'm still kind of, I have to admit, back in those years when I was drawing with those artists during research. So there was this realization, thank you, that I tend to go to extremes between solitude and self-sacrifice. So either working in solitude, this type of work, not necessarily the form it takes, but the type of work. Either the collaborative experiences made me realize that I tend to sway or go between extreme solitude and type of sacrificial efforts to please the other, and that perhaps also in personal life. So yeah, but there were many more, I guess, different personal realizations, and that when this is visualized on the paper plane in those collaborative works, that really helps sometimes, and people have it, I may have it, or I'm able to have it in front of my mind, sort of who I am, especially when I research the films and the way I move and so on. Yes, but from today's perspective, the modification goes down to the levels of energy, how I organize them in my work. And basically, when I do work solo, I always have a person in my mind that I'm going to work with. So it's just like a constant inclusion of another. Yeah.
Thank you.
So, sure.
Thank you. I think it's about time to summarize. Any last question to Agnieszka or what we have here? Okay. I think, well, there is quite a lot of things going on the chat, which I'll forward you also later on. But I want to say thank you very much, Agnieszka, for quite a lot of things, for the collaboration with me, the collaboration with Pro2Perform, for building this research, for for publishing this amazing book that will go on and on for other artists and students to research. I'm definitely going to practice it in the upcoming residency of Draw to Perform in September. So, yeah, that's for sure. And I would like to remind you that the next meeting of Draw to Perform will be on the 20th of July next month, and this will be with Robert Lauser, and I'm looking forward to speak and talk with Robert, as Robert also collaborated few times with Draw to Perform and with events of Draw to Perform and performances under this umbrella. Thanks again, everyone, for joining us. It was brilliant, very interesting for me. I hope also for you. And again, you, Agnieszka, Adam, your partner, and for releasing you to London to do this action with me back then. And thank you, and see you next time. Good luck with all future activities that you do.
Yes, I just want to thank you again at the end, and encourage you, if you have any additional impressions or anything comes up to your mind, or you just want to share again, please do write me an email. You can find it on my website, agakarasch.com. It's in the comments, and just share your impressions, or in my website, on my Facebook page as well. I'll be thrilled to read and respond.
Excellent. Yeah, keep it going, because I think it's very relevant subject to keep and investigate and reflect. Thank you very much all, and see you next time. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye bye.